Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Listen to Prison. I'm Tracy Thompson. I'm here with my son, Zane, who's my co-creator in this endeavor. And we're really excited to be bringing you our first actual episode. The first episode that we filmed that you can find online was really an introduction to tell you what we're trying to do here, what we're trying to accomplish, and how we're going to be presenting these illustrations to you of these people who are living behind bars in America. So today we're talking about Troy Hendrix. We introduced him to you in our first introductory episode, and he is a prisoner. He's 42 years old. He's been in prison since he was 19. He's imprisoned in Elmira Correctional Facility in New York State, the state of New York, and he has an amazing story to tell about spending decades or more than a decade in solitary confinement. Now, when we reached out to Troy in our first efforts to gather this content, we were using snail mail. So our first responses, we had sent all of our questionnaires out by snail mail, and we sent one to Troy. We got back an email communication from a woman named Bianca, who is a German woman who was acting sort of as Troy's liaison. And she and Troy were sort of talking in the background, and then she was conveying questions to us that Troy had. And ultimately, we got to the point where Troy decided that he did want to participate in this process once he sort of understood where we were coming from, what this was going to look like, and how it was going to be presented. Troy is currently serving a life sentence for murder, kidnap, and rape in Elmira Correctional Facility, and he maintains his innocence to this day. I wanted to share just a little bit of the back and forth that Bianca and I had before we get into Troy's response. Troy truly appreciates the opportunity to participate in your project and to share a small part of his story and experiences. I would also love to hear what inspired you to create a project that gives people in prison the opportunity to share their voices and experiences. If you ever feel like sharing a bit about the project, a bit about the background of the project, I would really enjoy hearing the story behind it. Warm regards, Bianca. So I responded to that. Why am I interested in this? I think there are many reasons. First and foremost, I think the justice system is totally flawed. Sentences are applied indiscriminately. Privilege, money, and race all play into who goes free and who pays with their freedom. In law school, I participated in a program at Greenhaven Prison where I got my first glimpse into the problem. The men incarcerated there had so much to offer, and it was lost to society the minute the cell door slammed behind them. Later in my career, I served as the executive director of the Louisiana Judicial College. I saw the members of the judiciary trying to address systemic injustice through education, but not really succeeding. The scale of the problem is greater than what can be solved in a half-day seminar on implicit bias. When I read Brian Stevenson's Just Mercy, it blew me away. His compelling and fact-based comparison of the modern-day justice system to the historical system of slavery convinced me. Once you know that, you can't unknow it. Finally, I raised 3 white sons as a single mother. I never had to fear for their lives because of the color of their skin when they walked out my door. I never had to instruct them on how to respond if they got pulled over by police, which they did many times. But their privilege protected them. Getting pulled over became a source of bro jokes rather than a prison sentence or worse. Also, I'm not intending to minimize or excuse criminal behavior. Instead, I want to put a human face on the nearly 2 million men and women who currently reside in our correctional facilities. And then Bianca replied, "Thank you for your message and for sharing more about what inspired you to create this project. Your words truly moved me. I have a great deal of respect for the work you're doing and for your willingness to give people in prison the opportunity to share their voices and experiences. Since you shared part of your story, I would also like to share a little about mine. My name is Bianca Buchek, and I live in Germany. I'm the mother of 2 daughters. One of them once gave a school presentation about the American justice system and the death penalty. While helping her research the topic, we came across the platform Write a Prisoner. That is how I first came into contact with Troy. What struck me immediately was not only his story, but also his writing and the depth of reflection in his words. Over time, I learned more about his case, and I've come to firmly believe in his innocence. Trying to help him has not been easy. The process has been slow and often discouraging, and over the past months, I have experienced many setbacks. Because of that, I recently adjusted my strategy and reached out to an attorney who has experience with wrongful conviction cases. He has now requested Troy's trial transcript in order to review the case. One encouraging moment recently was that Inquest expressed interest in Troy's writing and will be publishing one of his essays. His essays are very powerful and reflect deeply on his experiences and the reality of long-term incarceration and isolation. I'm also familiar with the book you mentioned, Just Mercy by Brian Stevenson. It left a strong impression on me as well because it illustrates so clearly how complex and at times unjust the system can be. So after that, I was interested to see whether Inquest had gone ahead and published Troy's work, and in fact they have, and I'm going to read a small excerpt from that. So this is on the journal on their site, inquest.org, and this is a piece that Troy wrote, just an excerpt from a piece called A Certain Darkness, Troy Hendrix in Inquest, May of 2026. The cell was filthy. The dull beige walls were stained with dirt and what appeared to be dried blood. There was also writing over the walls. Previous residents had inscribed their nicknames and gang affiliations. Some left profanity-laced rants about their girlfriends who'd abandoned them, and others about particular officers who had wronged them. There was also a quote, "A certain darkness is needed to see the stars." But I would not understand or appreciate its meaning until years later. Right above that quote was a skillful drawing of a little boy with sad eyes, and he was weeping. This picture has been imprinted on my mind ever since. So that's just an excerpt from Troy's work to give you a sense of sort of what you're going to hear, his responses to the questionnaire today and his the experiences that he's had spending so much time in solitary confinement. So I'm going to go through Troy's answers now. As I said, our questionnaire has changed slightly since this time. And also, we're willing to adjust our questionnaire. If there's anything that you as a listener are interested in knowing, we'd be happy to add questions to our questionnaire that we send out in the future. But as we said, this was our first draft. And so these are going to be a little different than the questions that we shared with you the first time. So this is direct from Troy. What is the greatest dream you've ever had for yourself? Troy says, my greatest dream was never about fame or wealth. I simply wanted to build a meaningful life for myself, to grow, to learn, and to become someone my family could be proud of. Like many young people, I didn't always understand what that path looked like when I was younger. It took time, mistakes, and reflection for me to begin understanding what truly matters in life. Today, after decades of reflection, my dream remains simple: to live with purpose, to continue growing as a person, and to use my experiences to help others understand the value of resilience, self-reflection, and second chances. Question number 2, what is your proudest achievement? One of my proudest achievements was earning my GED while I was confined in solitary confinement. Solitary confinement is designed to break a person mentally. The expectation was that isolation would destroy my mind. Instead, I made a decision that if I was going to survive that environment, I had to strengthen my mind rather than lose it. Education became my way of resisting the isolation that was meant to crush me. Now, I'm going to move a little out of order because we asked, as we were having this correspondence back and forth with Troy, we asked why he spent 16 years in solitary confinement. And here's his response to that. I was originally placed in solitary confinement after an incident in the courtroom during my trial. However, the amount of time I spent in isolation was excessive. In total, I spent 16 years in solitary confinement, far longer than many individuals who had committed serious acts of violence inside prison. When I entered the New York State prison system, I was placed in solitary under a classification known as administrative segregation, or ADSEG. Under this status, prison administrators could label someone as dangerous and keep them in isolation for an indefinite period of time. This meant living in a cell for approximately 22 to 24 hours a day with extremely limited human contact. People placed under ADSEG often remained there for years without meaningful review. In 2022, New York passed the HALT Solitary Confinement Act, which significantly restricted the use of long-term isolation and recognized the severe psychological harm caused by prolonged solitary confinement. Spending 16 years in that environment inevitably changes a person. It forces you to confront yourself, your mind, and your resilience in ways most people will never experience. How old were you when you were incarcerated, and how long have you been in? I was 19 years old when I entered the prison system. Today, I'm 42. That means my entire adult life has been spent behind prison walls. The years that most people use to discover who they are, build careers, start families, and experience freedom, I spent those years learning how to survive inside a prison. Time moves differently in prison. You measure it not only in years, but in lost moments, missed opportunities, and the life that continues moving forward outside while you remain in the same place. Number 4, what was your life like before imprisonment? Did you have a job or a family of your own? Before my incarceration, I was a misguided young man who had no real sense of direction. I had no clear purpose and no long-term goals. Like many young people growing up in certain environments, I believed the streets offered something they never truly give: belonging. My father struggled with drug addiction and left when I was young. My mother worked hard to provide for me and to keep stability in our home. I never experienced homelessness or extreme poverty, but the absence of a father figure and the influence of the streets shaped my life choices. I dropped out of school in the 9th grade and started making money the fast and illegal way. During that time, I also began drinking and smoking marijuana heavily. What started as influence from the environment around me slowly became part of the lifestyle I was living. Looking back now, I understand that I was searching for identity and direction in the wrong places. As I once wrote in one of my essays, sometimes it takes darkness to recognize the value of light. Number 5, what was your childhood like? Growing up, I did not experience extreme poverty or homelessness. My mother worked hard to make sure there was always food on the table, clothes on my back, and a roof over my head. She gave me stability and love, and for that, I will always be grateful. My biggest struggle was not poverty, but the absence of my father. He struggled with addiction and left when I was young. Without a strong father figure, I began looking for direction and belonging in the streets around me. At the time, the streets felt like family. I believed that the people around me cared about me and wanted the best for me. It took many years for me to understand that what I believed was loyalty and friendship was often something very different. When I was younger, I was simply a regular kid who enjoyed things like video games, sports, and spending time with friends. Looking back now, I understand how easily young people can be influenced by the environment around them. Number 6, what is the most surprising thing about being in prison? One of the most surprising things about being in prison is how differently time and perspective begin to work. From the outside, many people imagine prison as constant chaos or violence. In reality, much of prison life is long stretches of routine, silence, and reflection. Days can feel repetitive, and time moves in a way that is difficult to understand unless you have lived it. Over time, you begin to realize how important the small things become. A letter, a conversation, a good book, or even a quiet moment can carry a meaning that people on the outside might never think about. For me, prison also became a place where I was forced to confront myself. During the many years I spent in solitary confinement, I learned that the mind can either become your greatest enemy or your greatest strength. One of the most surprising lessons prison teaches you is that even in the most restrictive environment, the human mind still has the ability to grow. Number 7, what is the biggest misconception people on the outside have about prison? One of the biggest misconceptions about prison is the belief that everyone inside is actually guilty of the crime they were convicted of. In the public mind, a guilty verdict is often automatically equated with actual guilt. Once someone is convicted, many people stop asking further questions and assume that the justice system must have gotten it right. But the reality inside prison is far more complex. Behind these walls are many different life stories, different circumstances, and people who have experienced the justice system in very different ways. For people on the outside, a conviction often looks like the end of the story. For many people in prison, however, it is only the beginning of a much longer one. Number 8, what do you do to pass the time? Are you in any clubs, classes, or programs? To pass the time in prison, I try to keep both my mind and body active. I read a lot, study, listen to music, and exercise regularly. Books have been especially important to me. Reading allows me to mentally travel beyond the prison walls and continue learning about the world. It helps me stay strong and reminds me that even when the body is confined, the mind does not have to be. Music is another way for me to escape for a moment. One song I especially enjoy is Thinking Out Loud by Ed Sheeran. Songs like that remind me of the world outside and the simple human emotions that still exist beyond prison walls. I also enjoy cooking whenever I can. Even in prison, preparing food can be a simple act of creativity. Turning simple ingredients into something enjoyable reminds me that people can still create something good, even in difficult places. Over time, I have even shared some of my improvised recipes with people on the outside. It still makes me smile to think that a few of those prison-style recipes somehow made their way all the way to Germany. I assume here he's talking about Bianca and her family. These routines help me maintain balance and continue growing as a person, even while living in a very restricted environment. Will you ever be eligible for parole? At the present time, I do not have a parole date. I have always maintained my innocence and believe that my conviction was the result of a deeply flawed and corrupt justice process. Despite this, I continue to use my time in prison in a constructive way. I read, study, write, and reflect on my life and the world around me. Whether I will ever be given a meaningful opportunity for parole is something I cannot predict. What I continue to hope for is that the truth about my case will one day be fully recognized. Until then, I try to live with purpose and to ensure that even within these walls, my life still has meaning. Who do you idolize or look up to? As a Muslim, I do not believe in idolizing people. That does not mean there are no individuals I respect or draw inspiration from. I have great respect for people who try to live positively and do good things for others, even in difficult circumstances. People who show integrity, take responsibility, and try to bring more hope than hatred into the world. In an environment like prison, you quickly learn which qualities truly matter in life. It is not fame, money, or status, but character, patience, and compassion. For that reason, I look up to people who try to lift others up rather than tear them down. People who promote positivity and who believe that a person can be more than the circumstances they live in. What's the craziest thing you've experienced in prison? The most extreme and defining experience of my incarceration was spending 16 years in solitary confinement. Solitary confinement is something that's difficult to explain to someone who has never lived through it. It is not only physical isolation, it is psychological. Days become weeks, weeks become years, and the world slowly shrinks to a small concrete space. Over time, you learn that survival in that environment depends on your ability to protect your mind. Some people lose themselves in that isolation. Others learn how to adapt. For me, the experience forced a choice. Either allow the isolation to destroy my spirit or strengthen my mind enough to endure it. Those 16 years shaped the way I see the world, the way I value human connection, and the way I understand resilience. This next question was interesting because we had sort of some back and forth about whether we should include it because it seemed perhaps frivolous. But the question is, what are the most desired items in your commissary? And I'll never forget the first time I read Troy's response because it confirmed for me that this was really an important question to ask because what he says about commissary is really fascinating. And he says commissary items may seem small to people on the outside, but in prison, even simple things can carry meaning. Something as ordinary as a favorite snack, coffee, or ingredients to prepare a small meal can become a moment of normalcy in a place where very little feels normal. For many people inside prison, commissary is not just about food. It is about having a small piece of choice in an environment where most choices are taken away. Sometimes the most desired items are simply the ones that allow you to create a small moment of comfort, sharing food with others, preparing something simple, and remembering that even in prison, people still try to hold on to a sense of humanity. Next, we asked, who visits you? And then Troy says, I'm a private person, so I prefer not to go into details about who visits me or when those visits happen. What I will say is that visits from loved ones are something special. For those who are fortunate enough to receive them, they're moments that should be deeply cherished. Prison separates people from the world and from the people they care about. Because of that, every visit becomes meaningful. Whenever I receive a visit, I try to savor the moment. It becomes a rare space where love, connection, and human warmth can still exist despite the environment around us.
Such a crazy story that he's got. I mean, the commissary thing makes so much sense when you think about it. That's like the only normalcy.
And just the idea of that's the only place where they get to exercise choice, right? They have to wear the clothes that they're told to wear. They have to do the things they're told to do. But at commissary, they can exercise their own choice.
Right.
The next question is how do you feel about what's going on in the world today? Even from inside prison, this is Troy responding, even from inside prison, it is impossible not to notice what is happening in the world. When you spend a lot of time observing and reflecting, you begin to realize how deeply connected people are, even though society often focuses on the things that divide us. More than anything, I hope the world continues moving toward greater understanding, empathy, and accountability. Real progress does not come from anger alone. It comes from people being willing to listen, learn, and treat each other with dignity. If and when you get out of prison, what are your plans or goals? After spending decades in prison, my goals are simple. More than anything, I want the opportunity to live a meaningful and peaceful life. I want to experience the freedom that most people take for granted, to walk outside without permission, to make my own choices, and to rebuild the life that stopped when I was 19 years old. I would also like to continue writing and sharing my experiences. If my story can help even one person think differently about life, choices, or second chances, then those experiences will have meaning. And then lastly, is there anything you would like to tell the world or your family? Troy says, if there's one message I would want to share with the world, it is this. No matter our race, religion, background, or sexuality, in the end, we are all human beings. I have always maintained my innocence, and I continue to hope that the truth will one day be fully recognized. But beyond my own case, I hope people learn to see one another, first as human beings, rather than as labels or judgments. Too often, people are divided by prejudice, fear, and social labels. Yet the things that truly hold our lives together are not money, power, or status. The true anchors of a meaningful life are justice, humanity, and love. As Reuben Hurricane Carter once said, hate got me into prison, love's gonna bust me out. And that is the end of Troy Hendrix's response to our questionnaire and our inquiries. And it's just such an amazing story that this relatively young man has. And I'm glad we were able to share this with you. And we're going to start our wall of wisdom.
Yeah, wall of wisdom, yeah.
And this, what we're going to do is we're going to take the words of wisdom that we get from incarcerated individuals, and we're going to start with this. Now, I didn't do the research to see who Reuben Hurricane Carter is, but we'll do that, and we'll post any resources for you. But so the statement is, hate got me into prison.
Good message. Yeah, and that's the thing too. It's so the verbiage on that final question is different on this one to Troy. The final question moving forward that we sort of change is literally, do you have any words of wisdom? Is there anyone you'd like to apologize to? Right. And so the words of wisdom we've been getting back is remarkable, but here's the start of the wall of wisdom. So
hate got me into prison. Love's gonna bust me out.
Troy's the very first. So that wall, hopefully, eventually, is just gonna be littered with Post-it notes
from incarcerated people.
Yeah, words of wisdom. But yeah, the solitary confinement. I mean, if I was in solitary confinement, the worst part about that would be waking up, because you all of a sudden snap back to reality. You're in this box. Like, I don't know how they don't hallucinate in there.
Oh, I'm sure they do. I'm sure people are driven mad in that.
Yeah.
But that's why we'll have to post we'll post access to links to about the HALT Act that Troy mentioned as well. So you'll be able to look at that and find out what that's doing to change solitary confinement.
Yeah. But I mean, hell of a story for Troy.
First story, and just his writing is really just eloquent and touching. And I hope that you felt touched by listening to his story as well.
Yeah, and you cried the first time you read it.
Absolutely, I did.
It was he's a really good writer, really good with his words. Next one is going to be it's this handwritten letter here to my mom's left.
Kevin King. Another New York State. Oh, I'm sorry. No, he's Gainesville, Texas. Texas. We have not read this. We're going to read it live.
So she will probably cry on the camera. But thank you to Troy for participating, for being the first honorary member of Listen to Prison.
Awesome.
Immaculate job. Obviously, he set the bar really high, but a lot of takeaways from his letter here. Just a lot to think about, and the small things being so important. I feel like that's something that people on the outside take for granted 24/7.
Absolutely. Right? So thanks for joining us on this episode of Listen to Prison. We hope you'll like, comment, share, and subscribe. And really, in the comments, please let us know what you're thinking and what you'd like to hear. We're happy to change the questionnaire and add things that you might be interested in hearing from the people that we're talking to. So we hope to see you next Saturday. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcast. Peace.